The world is hung by a thin thread, and that is the psyche of man. C.G. Jung. I didn't really know uh, why I was painting this lately, and I completed it this morning. Uh, I call it the Big Apple, and so for what it's worth. Good morning, everyone. Um, I'm sorry to say my friend Jordan Hoggard has decided not to continue working with us here. So I really would appreciate it if one of my followers on YouTube, or at least one, and perhaps more, would like to join me today. Um, this is not a day for celebration. This is a day uh, after uh, we have bombed Iran, and it's the consequences can be pretty serious, and I don't think anybody should expect anything less than very serious consequences. So anyway, I call the painting, by the way, the Big Apple. You can see the um, you can see the metaphor in it, um, and decide for yourself what it means to you. Um, okay, today I'm going to read an essay. Um, it's in this book, Jung's Red Book for Our Time, Searching for Soul Under Postmodern Conditions, uh, edited by Murray Stein and Thomas Arst. And this was certainly a labor of love for my friend Thomas, who devoted much of the last years of his life to editing this series. He only made it through volume 4 because he died on Easter Sunday of the first year of COVID, one of the first victims of COVID at age 65. I mourn his loss very much. Okay, so this essay, um, if anybody would like to join us here on this, hi Brandy, nice to see you. If anybody would like to join this panel so that we can have a more lively discussion, please feel free. I'm not sure I can manage more than an hour on my own, but we shall see. So the name of this essay is The Metamorphosis of the Gods, Archetypal Astrology and the Transformation of the God Image in the Red Book by Kieran Legris. And I guess I ought to read something about his background here. Let's see what I can find. Okay. Kieran Legris is a professor of depth psychology and a chair of the Jungian and Archetypal Studies specialization at Pacifica Graduate Institute, Santa Barbara, California, where he teaches courses on archetypes, individuation, alchemy, synchronicity, and the history of depth psychology. He was educated at the University of Leeds, England, BA honors in philosophy and psychology, and the California Institute of Integral Studies, CIIS, in San Francisco, MA, PhD, philosophy and religion. He is the author of 4 books: The Archetypal Cosmos, Discovering Eros, The Rebirth of the Hero, and Archetypal Reflections, and co-editor of Jung on Astrology. Kieran is a founding editor of Archive, the Journal of Archetypal Cosmology, now serving as a senior editorial advisor and co-founder of the Institute of Transpersonal and Archetypal Studies. He has edited several books for Muswell Hill Press in London, and has also taught for CIIS and Groff Transpersonal Training. Webpage is Kieran Legrice, KieranLegrice.com. And so you can contact him after hearing this essay if you'd like to. Good morning, Art. Nice to see you. We're in the midst of a time which covers all these topics, doesn't it? Let's see here. Go back to this. So here today in our current events, we have the archetypes, we have individuation. A lot of people are going to have a big hit of individuation coming up in the next years. Alchemy, we certainly have an alchemist at work. Synchronicity, and the history of depth psychology. So let us see what happens. We haven't even heard the other shoe drop yet, but I'm not sanguine. Okay, here's his introduction by Kieran Legrice. A broader consideration of the significance of Jung's Red Book must take into account the historical moment in which it was created. If it is relevant not only to Jung himself as the articulation of a personal mythology, but also to Western civilization at large, then we must turn our focus to the evolution of the modern West as revealed in its major historical and religious transitions. One way this might be done in keeping with the tenets of analytical psychology is to consider the archetypal factors impinging upon the Western psyche and the cultural zeitgeist in the late 19th and early 20th century. From the time of Jung's birth to the creation of Liber Novus, in so doing, we might gain some perspective on the significance of our own and our evolving conceptions of the spiritual dimension of experience. And certainly we're about to evolve quite a bit more, I'm afraid. My fundamentalist colleague at school thinks there's going to be the rapture and we bad people are going to be left behind, and he's going to float up to heaven. That's a nice childish way to think about it. And I'm sorry if I've offended any fundamentalists here, but that's the way we think, the way I think about it. And I don't cut any corners when I'm talking. Okay, archetypal cosmology. Systems theorist Eric Jung's vision of a self-organizing universe governed by homologous principles and interconnected natural dynamics functioning across all levels of life can help us to appreciate that human experience is subject to the same laws and principles by which the universe itself is directed. And for this, I'm going to share my piece, which I call The Big Apple. I'm going to subtitle it with Jung's quote, "The world hangs by a thin thread," and that is the psyche of man. These principles are working through us, animating and patterning our individual experiences, while also finding expression at the collective level in cultural history. This insight has long been recognized in the practice of astrology, a symbolic system that seeks to understand the changing forms of expression of universal principles through the study of the cycles of planets in the solar system, as well as the sun and the moon. Following the Copernican revolution, astronomy gradually divorced itself from consideration of the symbolic meaning of astronomical phenomena for human experience, but to this day, astrologers study the movements of the planets in their orbits and the geometric alignments they make with each other, interpreting the significance of such alignments for individual lives and for the world at large. The recent emergence of the discipline of archetypal cosmology, in which I myself am involved, has sought to put astrology on firmer theoretical and empirical ground, drawing extensively on Jungian psychology. In relation to other perspectives such as Platonism, evolutionary cosmology, and the new paradigm sciences, to understand and articulate the archetypal basis of astrology and its capacity to illuminate the dynamics of the human psyche. Archetypal astrology is the name given to the methodology and particular approach to astrological analysis pursued in the field. Jung's ideas were instrumental in the development of this approach. He saw astrology as the sum of all the psychological knowledge of antiquity, and he believed that astrology, like the collective unconscious with which psychology is concerned, consists of symbolic configurations. The planets are the gods, symbols of the powers of the unconscious. Especially relevant here is Jung's view that the psychology of archetypes can help to account for the interconnection between historical events and the general laws underlying individual development, for these are two of the primary areas of application of astrology. Okay, now what I would like to point out here in part is that it's interesting that in this week, both Jordan Hoggard has withdrawn from being a participant in this every Sunday event, and also that my fundamentalist friend said that he's not worried about whether we have a war because he's expecting the rapture. Well, we might find the rapture anywhere in the world today or in the coming weeks because I am not sanguine that we can think that Iran is on the other side of the world and therefore untouchable by us and we untouchable by them. I wouldn't be so foolish. There are 92 million people living in Iran, and we have just poked a bee's nest. And I'm reminded of the anxiety that Admiral Yamamoto felt at the time of Pearl Harbor when he had his best day of World War II, which was the surprise attack on Pearl Harbor. And um, he said, I fear we have awakened a sleeping giant. And I don't know whether we have awakened a sleeping giant, but I suspect so. And that sleeping giant probably goes far further than um, Iran. Uh, and I guess we all need to buckle up and pay attention to the fact that the Trump administration in Project 2025 has basically suggested the reinstitution of the draft by saying everybody that hits 18 needs to sign up for the draft and qualify for MOS. Well, I don't know of any MOSs in the military. MOS is a military occupation specialty. Um, I don't know of any MOSs in the military that require less than 6 months of training. And certainly there are none in the Marine Corps. And I don't think there are any in the other armed forces as well. So what they mean is you're going to go into some sort of active service as the boy band BTS has just been through in Korea, where they do have such service. But enjoy today, because I don't think this will be, if anyone out there is enjoying today and enjoying the fact that the United States has bombed a country on the other side of the world, and the implications of that, which are vast, you better enjoy it today, because this will be the only day that it will be as enjoyable, as my expectation. And of course, Jung himself believed this as well. Um, so, as I say, the painting that I was doing, I didn't know why I was painting a globe hanging by a thin thread, but now I know, and it's really an archetypal contribution, I would say. And Brandy says, well, the time has come. Yes, I'm afraid the time has come. And whether I think Jung was not sanguine about what that might mean. He said, watch out for the generals. They'll want to pull the trigger. And, you know, Trump had to go into the National Guard to find people that would be willing to do it. So now we're in it. Thank you, Prime Minister Netanyahu. In archetypal astrology, each planet is associated with a particular universal principle and a related set of archetypal themes. Venus, for instance, is associated with love, beauty, pleasure, and harmony, whereas Saturn is associated with death, judgment, maturation, limitation, structure, and separation. When the planets form significant geometric relationships with each other, including angles of 0, 60, 90, 120, and 180 degrees, the corresponding planetary archetypes themselves move into relationship, giving giving rise to clusters of archetypal themes and complexes evident in discernible patterns of cultural history and individual biography. We see the Venus-Saturn combination in the slow maturation of a love relationship over many years of dutiful devotion and work, for instance, or in a reserved and restrained manner of expressing affection, or in judgments of beauty and an appreciation of classical tradition and art. There are three main kinds of analysis employed in archetypal astrology. First, one can study the meaning of the placement of the planets at the time of birth, as portrayed in an astrological birth chart, which gives insight into how the planetary archetypes manifest in personality traits and major themes of biography. Second, as illustrated in the analysis to follow in this paper, one can study the ongoing relationships formed between the planets as they move in their orbits day by day, year by year, to illuminate changes in the collective human experience, a method known as world transit analysis. And third, one can explore the relationship between world transits and birth charts to gain insight into how the archetypes are impacting on individuals' life experiences at any given time. These are personal transits. And astrological analysis can help to illuminate the archetypal patterns underlying the events of any given era, to make known the universal principles as they find expression in the concrete details of human experience at that time. Taking an archetypal view can draw attention to a background order or formal cause in which the chains of historical events unfold, and enable us to see through the events of history to their to their mythic background and archetypal reasons. James Hillman describes this perspective well. Quote, outer historical facts are archetypally colored so as to disclose essential psychological meanings. Historical facts disclose the eternally recurring mythmas of history and of our individual souls. Um, History is but the stage on which we enact mythemes of the soul. Okay, so we have a big turning point in history happening this weekend, as most of you must have noticed. And I'll just look at some of the comments here, if any. Um, Cherie says, a friend of mine handed me book bookmaker a prayer for luck written by a loyal supporter to America's disabled veterans uh, at my library. Um, well, I'd be one of those disabled veterans. And yes, was disabled on a day that I was on active duty in the U.S. Marine Corps. Um, and a bookmarker. Okay, so everyone should go out and read this prayer for luck. Well, I don't think luck is going to be with us for a bit. Unfortunately, um, we haven't even had the second half of round one yet. And so we're about to see just how bad this can be, but it can be pretty bad. And there are all kinds of scenarios that can be envisioned. Let us not envision them. Let us pray that um, everybody just backs down and cools it. Unfortunately, I don't hold much hope for that at the moment. um, so anyway, all right, the Neptune-Pluto cycle. By 1875, the year of Jung's birth, the slow-moving outer planets, Neptune and Pluto, with orbital periods of 165 and 248 years, respectively, entered the beginning of a rare conjunction in which they occupied the same section of space within the great circle of the zodiac, a symbolic band inscribed around the Earth, comprising the 12 well-known signs from Aries through Pisces. The zodiac is the primary frame of reference used in astrology to map the movement of the planets. As seen from Earth, the planets were positioned within approximately 20 degrees of each other, the operative range for a conjunction between the outer planets. Initially, in the sign of Taurus for a period of just over 30 years, more roughly 1875 to 1908. A conjunction of these planets only occurs once every 500 years. Even more unusual, in this case, the Neptune-Pluto conjunction also coincided with an opposition and 180-degree alignment with Uranus, first between Uranus and Pluto, and then Uranus and Neptune. Periods of history in which these planets form major axial alignments, that is, conjunctions and oppositions with each other, are rare indeed. For instance, as Richard Tarnas has observed, one must look back to the heart of the axial age to find a conjunction of all three planets. When they were positioned within 20 degrees of each other from 594 to 560 BCE. The unity, the only such conjunction is recorded history. This period extending from 800 to 200 BCE, but centered on the 6th century, was like no other in human history, witnessing the emergence of Buddhism, Jainism, Confucianism, Taoism, Zoroastrianism, and Platonism, as well as major developments in Judaism and Hinduism. More recently, to give two further examples discussed by Tarnas, the three planets formed another highly significant alignment known as a T-square, with Uranus opposite Neptune and both planets in 90-degree square alignments to Pluto in the years around the birth of Shakespeare in 1564 and in 1760 through 70. The three planets entered a 120-degree trine alignment with each other, a so-called grand trine, which again is all astronomical occurrence seldom witnessed. Remarkably, Tarnas observes, the period of this alignment saw the unique coincidence of the birth of several towering creative geniuses, world history figures in every sense: Beethoven, Hegel, Napoleon, Wordsworth, and Holderlin, who were to exert such an immense influence on the Western world in philosophy, religion, art, and socio-political history. Okay. Okay, I'm going to look back here. Okay. Um, yep. Well, for me, because I'm not an astrology expert, I find this a little difficult to follow. But as my friends selected this piece for this publication, I'll keep going. Um, Given the rarity of such alignments and given the nature of the archetypes associated with Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, any historical period accompanying major geometric configurations of these three planets is marked out as extremely significant, bringing forth deep-rooted and immensely consequential changes in human experience and witnessing the birth of individuals who affect such changes, a reflection in both cases of the combined archetypal qualities and themes associated with the planets. Uranus is specifically associated with awakening, freedom, liberation, revolt, trickster-like disruptions, and the urge to go one's own way in life, to realize one's uniqueness, to manifest in the spark of creative genius and the Promethean urge to birth the news, to pioneer, to invent, and to push beyond established limits and boundaries. Neptune is the principle associated with the realm of myth, dream, image, and fantasy. It is evident in spiritual experience and religious consciousness, in the aspiration toward the ideal and the longing for paradise, or simply in the urge to escape from or transcend the pressures and limitations of material existence in separate individual consciousness. It is connected with magic and enchantment, but also delusion, dissolution, and self-loss. Pluto finds expression as instinctual compulsion and power drives. In this respect, it is reflected in Freud's concept of the id and in Nietzschean will to power as a Shiva-like principle of transformative, creative, destructive force and elemental energy. Pluto is manifest in the power that impels evolution, purging and destroying old forms, driving the ongoing cycles of death, rebirth in nature. It is the principle of depth and symbolized as the mythic underworld. So um, we might want to reflect upon um, what's going on now. I don't know from an astrological point of view, so I'll leave that to all of you and the people who comment after this. Um, yeah, I just um, am without particular comment except to a feeling of tremendous foreboding because we have children running the American government, um, and people who people who are not afraid of trying things Okay, that's all well and good, but it may not be good if you have a family member in the military right now. Might not be good if you live close to Washington, D.C., and any number of other places around the world. Who knows? Um, it's it's a particularly troublesome time, and I have been through troublesome times in the past, and um, the government gets away with making a war for some reason, and then average people have to pick up the pieces. Oh, goodness. Okay. Well, I do want to check how long is this, because we do have a metamorphosis of the gods. I didn't say a good god necessarily. Um, but anyway, let's just see how long this is. Oh, very long. Golly. Okay, so we have 15 pages left in this article. Um, and obviously, we are in a time of purging and destroying old forms. Um, and it, it obviously is a display of immaturity to think that you can win a war uh, with no cost. And unfortunately, I think that some of the people that are talking heads right now um, do think that. In the 2000 publication Cosmos and Psyche, Tarnas documented the interpreted the significance of periods of major alignments between the pairings of Uranus-Neptune, Uranus-Pluto, and Neptune-Pluto, identifying a number of themes that are manifest in cultural history at these times. He provides examples of the correlation between Uranus-Neptune alignments and the birth of new philosophies, spiritual awakenings and the birth of new religions, and the creative emergence of esoteric traditions, revelations of the the numinous, and birth of new forms of artistic expression. In each case, the Uranus principle acts to awaken and catalyze a range with range, blah, blah, blah. Can't turn the page. It's normal. Okay. The Uranus principle acts to awaken and catalyze a large Neptunian experience and enlarge of Neptunian experiences. What? Catalyze a range of Neptunian experiences. That's what it said. Okay. Um, Often connected to the spiritual dimension of life, all of these themes are prominent in Jung's creation of the Red Book, principally between 1913 and 1918, during the Uranus and Neptune opposition of 1899 to 1918. By contrast, the Uranus-Pluto combination is associated in Tarnas's historical survey with themes such as the awakening of the Dionysian instinct, the eruption of powerful elemental forces, revolutions, and the empowerment of mass protests, political extremism, and the instinctually driven desire to make the world new in a radical overflow and destruction of the ruling order, as exemplified by the period of the French Revolution and the revolutionary decade of the 1960s. In these cases, Uranus serves to stir and liberate the instincts, sexual, aggressive, and power drives, and to bring to the surface the contents of the Plutonic underworld, the base and barbaric, the primitive and the evil, but also the passion and power that might fuel one's individuation and vocational calling. Simultaneously, Pluto empowers and intensifies the creative impulses, innovations, and drives for freedom associated with Uranus, manifesting as periods of accelerated technological and social cultural change. These themes and others associated with the Uranus-Pluto archetypal complex are plainly manifest at the current time in coincidence with the Uranus-Pluto square of 2002 to 2020. Whew, okay, I'm going to provide the link uh, so that you can get on this and help me stay awake. Because as usual, when I get reading these things, I get kind of hypnotized, and then it's not easy to continue. So I'm hoping that someone will be inspired to join me today. Um, let's see. The place where you would sign up for, well, let me see. I have hit it from myself, as usual. Let's see. How did I get to that? Sorry, I don't have the link handy, so if you don't have it, I guess you can't get to me. Um, but maybe it's in old group notices. Um, nope, I've just done too many of these videos, so I now no longer have good indexing for it. I apologize for that. Since you seem to be sticking with me, I'm going to keep going. Okay, going on. The religious revelation documented by Jung in the Red Book might be taken, I believe, as a transformation of just this kind of offering a new mythic vision that reflects or anticipates an evolution of our religious consciousness, a development entirely consistent with the meaning of the combined Neptune-Pluto conjunction and Uranus-Neptune opposition at that time, especially relevant for understanding the archetypal factors shaping the Red Book are the Neptune-Pluto themes of the empowerment of the myths, mythic imagination, and what Tarnas characterizes as the transformation in the experience of the numinous. An example of particular relevance to the West and to Jung's own religious background was the writing of the second Isaiah about 545 BCE during the Axial Age, which brought forth, Tarnas notes, a powerful declaration of a loving God, sovereign over all history and all humanity, and a metamorphosis of the prophetic imagination, exemplifying the quintessential Uranus-Neptune theme of a radical transformation of the God image and a revolutionary new understanding of the divine will acting in history. The latter, especially appropriate to the presence of Pluto, is the configuration with its archetypal association with both evolution and universal will. Well, we're about to see whether this all works out that way. Good morning to Canada. Sherry says the nirvana is gained by 8 things: right faith, right judgment, right purpose, right practice, right obedience, right memory, and right meditation. The great virtue of the religion of benevolence. And Karen Dars, it says, good afternoon from Israel. And Buddhism knows no supreme God or creator, says Shri. Yes, absolutely. True. Okay, so Karen, you could tell us how Israelis are feeling today after Trump has begun his bombing campaign, which I am not sanguine is over. I have no doubt that those planes will be back at their base refueling and rearming very soon. um, long flight, 18 hours, they said, um, over there. And then they had to turn around and come back. So, um, so Karen lives in Western Galilee. Uh, so that might be modestly safe because I think you have a mountain or a mountain range between you and Tel Aviv. And I don't know how far you are from Jerusalem, but maybe that will be a modestly safe area. I don't know that there's any safe area, certainly not in the United States. I don't feel sanguine that we have any safe area here. Archifinance says Gautama Buddha is seen by some Hindus as the ninth incarnation of Vishnu. So this is kind of weird. Yes, there is a supreme being, yet Buddha is a manifestation of him. Well, I think it's a nice fairy tale we tell ourselves. I think the Bhagavad Gita is more useful here in the sense that it tells us what has to be done in the event of a war or a battle between people that don't really want to fight. Is there anybody out there that wants to fight? If so, please go see the recruiter tomorrow. Um, I'm glad you're here for a space of sanctuary. I hope it is a space of sanctuary. Um, I'm not sanguine. I served 23 years in the U.S. Marine Corps, and I know about what I speak. And one of the things any Marine will tell you is that you can't assure a result on the ground simply by a bombing campaign, which obviously our experience in the Vietnam War and the Afghan War um, and the Iraq War all demonstrated this principle that you have to have boots on the ground or nothing happens. And I am not sanguine that anything is accomplished until boots are on the ground. But um, this is not a wish that they be on the ground, but um, I think if we're going to be certain that there's no nuclear program in Iran, then somebody's going to have to go check. And I don't know who we would trust on the other side. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to read this last paragraph again because I don't think I was conscious that I was conscious, and Sheree, I'm uh, grateful for your comment. Um, The religious revelation documented by Jung in his Red Book might be taken, I believe, as a transformation of just this kind of offering a new mythic vision that reflects and or anticipates an evolution of our religious consciousness, a development entirely consistent with the meaning of the combined Neptune Pluto conjunction and Uranus Neptune opposition at that time, especially relevant for understanding the archetypal factors shaping the Red Book are the Neptune Pluto themes of the empowerment of the mythic imagination, and what Tarnas characterizes as the transformation in the experience of the numinous. An example of particular relevance to the West and to Jung's own religious background was the writing of the second Isaiah about 545 BCE during the Axial Age, which brought forth, Tarnas notes, a powerful declaration of a loving God sovereign over all history and all humanity, and a metamorphosis of the prophetic imagination, exemplifying the quintessential Uranus Neptune theme of the radical transformation of the God image and the revolutionary new and understanding of the divine will acting in history. The latter, especially appropriate to the presence of Pluto, is in the configuration with its archetypal association with both evolution and universal will. Um, Okay, what I wanted to urge upon you is to uh, read the Bhagavad Gita. I have read it. I have read it in three versions on this YouTube channel with Khushbu Kantaria, who read it in Sanskrit. And it's a text that goes back now 5,000 years, but it has tremendous and timely advice for all of us now. And the Bhagavad Gita entirely occurs in an instant. Okay, it's a numinous moment. And by an by an instant, I mean just that Arjuna, who was a warrior prince, is in his chariot going into battle. And on one set of hills to his right, he has one set of relatives, and on one side, he's got another set of relatives, and he doesn't know which side to support. And and so uh, he starts talking to Krishna, who turns out to be his chariot driver. His chariot driver turns into Krishna in a numinous sense, and says, "Well, you have to do what fate requires of you, and don't worry about killing your kinsmen because I will give you new ones." And so, you know, obviously we see that after World War One, when the women of Germany created a new generation of young people to serve the fascists for World War II, and and we just see it time and again now over my lifetime, all the wars we've had, and there are new young troops who are happy to go in there and do the bidding of whoever's in power. And I was one of them. Um, and so I guess what I'm saying is that we can't change our fate. We're in a time where our president is the president, and he's going to do what he's going to do, and we just have to choose the best of the possibilities for ourselves in every moment, in every eternal moment. Um, yeah, as Archimedes says, and he's quoting the Bhagavad Gita now: "Arise and attain honor, conquer your foes, and enjoy prosperous rulership. These warriors stand already slain by me, and you will only be an instrument of my word, O expert archer." The expert archer is Arjuna in this case. Um, and Kathy Kerr says sick stuff, but that's what's archetypally in our soul. And most of us can't do much about what's going on. So um, we have to live our lives, and living our lives can be painful in a psychological way. Um, and one can only hope that things will turn out not too badly, as Dr. Jung said. Um, and so anyway, okay, so here's a topic for you: the death and rebirth of God. It was the same potent combination of planetary archetypes that was activated during the Neptune-Pluto conjunction of the late 19th century, described by Tarnas as the great crucible of metaphysical destruction and regeneration of Western culture that saw the discovery of the unconscious and the birth of depth psychology. Uh, Friedrich Nietzsche and Jung were two of the central figures in this great transformation, which continues to unfold in our own time. Indeed, its implications are only just beginning to be worked out. And oh my goodness, was he ever right? uh, and so God is dead. We have killed him, you and I. Nietzsche's epical proclamation, first made in the Gay Science, heralded the West's entrance into the post-Christian era. His philosophy also anticipated that the postmodern, in its radical questioning of truth and exposure of hidden power drives underlying human motivations, especially in the spheres of politics and knowledge. Departing from the pious Christian environment of his youth, Nietzsche espoused a fervent atheism and nihilism, arguing that the Christian notion of God, a man-made image in his view, was no longer relevant to human experience. Indeed, it was an impediment to our further evolution. Christianity had made Western culture decadent, um, promulgating values and ways of being that were injurious to the human spirit, keeping human beings in a state of servile and docile mediocrity, subject to the oppressive and inverted values of the herd. Man, as the sick animal, had grown distant from the vitality of the instincts and forsaken the aspiration to excellence, caught in the embrace of Christian conceptions of selflessness, purity, meekness, pity, and so forth, qualities that Nietzsche believed often masked an unconscious power drive or an avoidance of the necessary challenge of courageous living and affirming one's own life. Your love of your neighbor is your bad love of yourselves, he remarked with characteristic insight. Thus, Nietzsche sought to wipe away the horizon of past metaphysical suppositions in a reevaluation of all values, a repudiation of Christianity, and an affirmation of the Dionysian energy largely excluded from the Christian vision of the world. Nietzsche's influence on Jung can hardly be overstated. Sono Shamdasani notes that Jung returned to carefully study Thus Spake Zarathustra in 1914 in the midst of the influx of fantasies during his confrontation with the unconscious, which formed the body of the Red Book. Nietzsche's influence is apparent not only in the epic narrative style of the Red Book, which resembles that of Zarathustra, but also in its content, addressing as if in response to Nietzsche, the death and transformation of God through the dramatic dialogues with the spirit guides, Philemon and Elijah. Jung responded in several distinct, though overlapping ways, all of which illuminate the particular form of expression of the Neptune-Pluto themes working through him. Exploring these responses can yield insights into how we ourselves might relate to those archetypal principles today. Okay. I'm of a mind that um, when you're dead, you don't know you're dead. It's only difficult for your family, and when you're stupid, it works the same way. Um, and but by the same token, I don't think we should throw away Christianity or any other religion because those have been sort of the guidelines that huge cultures around the world have followed for approaching 3,000 years now. And we need to understand those guidelines and what they're saying to us. Um, and, I do believe that the Bible is true, 100% true, because it's believed by someone. It is taken as gospel by someone, and it has lots of very good wisdom we can all follow. Um, and so it's not fiction. It's a true book that has been adopted by a quarter of the world's population and so on. So I'm not to the point of discarding the Christian God. By the same token, I am, a frequently practicing Buddhist. So what that does. Okay. Um, so Deborah C. says, I think things will develop in ways we aren't expecting. For instance, there could be an impeachment and a hyper-realization of the futility of the recent developments. Yeah. Jung spoke about the collective unconscious, and we can reach breakthroughs on that. Uh, Darkest before the dawn, in my opinion. Cherie, a state of attention beyond thought, which brings total freedom from authority and ambition, fear and separateness. True peace comes from within. Absolutely. And I'm reminded of the 1980 movie Chariots of Fire, in which Eric Liddell is running a 440 race, and he falls down and manages to get up and win the race. And he says in the narrative voiceover, so where does the power come from to see the race through to the end? From within. Okay, that's where it comes from. And all of us have a piece of that power. We're all godlike in that way. Um, Sure, he says a state of attention beyond thought, which brings total freedom from authority and ambition, fear, and separateness. Kathy says true peace comes from within. Yes, that's what I was referring to. Deborah, yes, Sheree, and purposeful decision making infused by that. So we don't hold back from involvement, but move forward. And Deborah says Nietzsche is a bit bleak, in my opinion. He himself went mad in an asylum, very overly intellectual and terrible in the earthly level. He was always falling in love and unstable to consummate, unable to consummate. Um, he may well have influenced Jung, but he wasn't particularly balanced. And Archifanes says, except from Nietzsche's Ecce Homo, that a psychologist without equal speaks from my writings. This is perhaps the first insight gained by a good reader. And then he says, who among the philosophers before me was in any way a psychologist? Before me, there were there simply was no psychology. Well, that's not true because William James was quite a psychologist um, in the 1840s, and he became a preacher, but the psychology that's presented, for example, in his, um, I don't know, it's one of his key sermons. I think it's his first sermon. Uh, it's pretty powerful. Richard says people look to Nietzsche for wisdom. I don't get it. Well, I agree with that. I mean, it, to me, reading Nietzsche is kind of a seasickening experience because he goes up and down, and he sets something up and shoots it down, sets something up and shoots it down, and that's the way his writing is. And he may have been brilliant to bring all those things up, but he has to somehow figure out how it affects us. And so, yeah, he spewed some wisdom. I mean, there's an old Bob Newhart bit, which was what happens if you if you tried to get a group of monkeys to type the great books. And he says you'd have to take an infinite number of monkeys and an infinite number of typewriters and get them typing, and then you'd have checkers who would check to see if they've written anything profound. And he presents the day in the life of one of these checkers, and he reads out what the monkey has typed in it. It is to be or not to be. That is the Gazernenplat. And that still tickles me. I first heard that, oh my God. Um, well, at least 65 years ago, maybe more. And uh, we can't take ourselves too seriously. Um, and, you know, people that supported Donald Trump are about to be getting a big lesson in global affairs that maybe they haven't understood clearly up till now. Um, but, we have to be able to hold the tension in our psyche. That the opposites are there. Iran and the U.S. as sort of counterparties have been opposites for 50 years, more than that, actually, more like 70 years since we knocked out an Iranian prime minister in 1952. I think his name was Mossadegh. And we set up this um, Shah of Iran. And boy, I think there are some members of the Shah's family still going, sons and such. And I think if you ever get offered to be the emperor of a country, run like hell the other way because it's not going to be good. And let's see. Uh, So Cherie says, take up the white man's burden. You dare not stoop to less, nor call too loud too less, nor call too loud on freedom to cloak your weakness. By all you cry or whisper, fly all by all you leave or do the uh, yeah. It's not a white man's burden. It's a burden of humanity. It's now we have to this postmodern era, and I guess we have to start calling it a postmodern uh, era because it's not really the postmodern era as described by my friend Thomas. Um, is that we have to convince mankind some way um, that, oh, by the way, we have a small planet and we better stop this stuff that we're doing to our planet, um, and to include having wars on it. Um, it's not a very healthy thing to do. And just to remind everyone, let's see what I can do here. Okay. Hmm. Oh, the problem is what layer am I on? Okay, I'm on this layer. Here's the layer. Okay. So, my Big Apple painting is really intended to also, or I wouldn't say intended, but it's it's really this point. You know, Trump can have our B-2 bombers crawl the 1 millimeter around the circumference of the Earth to get it to Iran and bomb Iran. But in the greater scheme of things, he's not really accomplishing anything. Um, at least not in this context. So what we have to do is get smarter and find more wisdom so that we don't do this stuff to ourselves all the time, which we have been doing for a lot of years. I mean, in the thousands of years. Um, So Deborah says Nietzsche would have kept Jung occupied as a patient for sure, but we can make contributions while being imperfect. Jung himself is an example with his break of marital bonds with his affairs. Yeah, I think that's right. Um, Deborah says, I look at it in another way. Jung was powerfully lonely because of his insights, and it's natural. He was looking for solace in this way. Jung was so far ahead of anyone else that the loneliness was profound. I think we can give him a break on that issue, absolutely. Um, you know, yeah, he who knows no sin throw the first stone, you know, goes back to biblical times. Richard says, Caliper 7, Jung was an egocentric black magic philanderer. Well, okay, we can come up with um, epithets to describe any one of us, I suppose. That was one of the lessons of the Bhagavad Gita, where Arjuna is given about 30 epithets, names by Krishna. Yeah, I think it seems to me that the thing we have to be conscious of is that nobody's perfect, and all of everything that we've ever done just comes back. And, certainly in my lifetime, I'm seeing these things. Okay, God is creative power. This is part of Kieran DeGrease's essay. In his first response to Nietzsche's claim that God is dead, Philemon issues a refutation and associates God with the power of creation. God is not dead. He is alive as ever. God is creation, for he is something definite. Later, God is identified in the form of abraxas, a creative drive and the creative and created. The emphasis on creative power is also present in Nietzsche. He rejects the existence of God, describing God as merely a temporary supposition, but he then transfers the focus of the creative power of human will, and you yourself should create what you have hitherto called the world. The world shall be formed in your image by your reason, you will and your will and your love. Thus, the human being, rather than God, becomes a kind of world creator. Um, Although in places Nietzsche presents this creative power as something other than his conscious willing, often he appears to appropriate the power as his own. Those familiar with a Jungian understanding of archetypal possession might judge the failure to recognize such power as originating outside the personal human will as potentially dangerous and perhaps therefore a contributory factor in Nietzsche's grandiose inflation, especially evident in his later writing. The understanding of God as something like creative energy is also close to the view of Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, the Jesuit priest and paleontologist whose brilliant synthesis of Christianity and evolution inspired many of the 1950s and thereafter, and whose idea later informed new cosmology theorists, including Thomas Berry, Mary Evelyn Tucker, and Brian Swimme. Jung's prophetic revelation in the Red Book was of a God yet to come, a God of a wholly different character. Wholly different character to the loving transcendent Father that had ruled for the 2,000 years of the Christian era. In a related shift, Teilhard described a transition from worship of the God of the above to the recognition of the God of the ahead, manifest through continued creative acts, who is to be realized as the culminating goal of evolution. Like Jung, Teilhard was born during the Neptune-Pluto conjunction of the late 19th century. We find a similar emphasis in Indian philosophers. Sri Aurobindo's integral yoga shaped by a vision of involution of the supermind into matter and its subsequent evolution, gradually belonging about uh, gradually bringing about the spiritualization of matter and all existence, also born during the Neptune-Pluto conjunction. Aurobindo, like Jung and Teilhard, brought the Platonic emphasis on evolution and transformation into relationship with Neptunian conceptions of the eternal spiritual ground and transcendent Godhead. A prominent theme of this Neptune-Pluto conjunction, the focus on the creative power of evolution, now manifest through the individual, gives a decidedly Platonic inflection of the experience of God for the Plato archetype. finds expression in the motive evolutionary force in the universe, experienced as an inexorable life will and will to power. Okay, I'm going to stop there, folks, because this is a long essay. Um, and I will come back to your YouTube chat, but I'm personally losing it. So I got to come back. I will say that on one occasion when I was in India, I did have occasion to visit Aurobindo's ashram, and it was a very interesting place. Um, and that's a story, I guess, for another time, but um, he convinced a lot of people, I guess. So Archifaunus says we can see nothing today that wants to grow greater. We suspect that things will continue to go down to become thinner, more good-natured, and more prudent, more comfortable, more mediocre, more indifferent, more Chinese, more Christian. There is no doubt that man is getting better all the time. Well, I guess we're getting better, but to say that there's no um, that there's nothing today that wants to grow greater, I think we can point to our president for sure. Um, and so, you know, he needs to cool it, but he's not going to until he's um, lost all his credibility. The trouble is that how many people will lose their lives for his individuation? God knows that. Yeah, so G. Watt, you asked what is my other channel, and I'm afraid I've let that deteriorate to the point where it's no longer online. I might post some of the material before. I mean, I've been publishing things since uh, 2010, and I published a book in 2007. If you want to see fully what I have to say about the Middle East, you can read that book, which is called Tsunami of Blood. It so happens that before 2007, I traveled many times to the Middle East, especially, and I have had a lot of experience there. And my book, Tsunami of Blood, um, really talks about what has been cooking up since Gulf War One, for example. Richard says Jung gave credence to the nonsense of demons, and demons are real. I'm drenched in them every day for the last 6 years. Well, yeah, they are real. And the question is, how does each individual deal with his own demons, I guess? Um, Deborah says, I'm an optimist. I think this is a shaking out process and we will have a renewal of democracy and participation in that. Um, and Arcofanes says, wouldn't be an issue if we didn't act on foreign interests. Uh, Deborah, also many Iranian people are desperate for a change of leadership. The problem is containing the extremism. And she asks if you have read Robert Fisk, and I have not. But in any case, you have to realize that the boss is always an asshole. And as a result of that fact, um, and if you're the boss, then you're it, right? It's just, the problem is some are bigger than others, and one has to not be killed while avoiding the crap of another person. Um, so Arcphonius says Zoroastrians have been persecuted since Islam arrived in Persia. Um, yeah, I don't. I guess I don't have enough of a comment because um, I'm familiar with the Parsi community of India, which came from um, you know, came from Iran um, 1,000 years ago. And it's a community that's very effective. It takes care of its own. I have some very good friends who are Parsis and um, also Aga Khanis for that matter, people who follow the Aga Khan. I think the best thing that we can observe is just how much alike all of our religions are. And if we only notice that, then we can start to um, come together because um, you know I've had many numinous experiences. I understand them in a psychological way as Jung explained them. We've evolved to the point where I'm able to do that, whereas maybe even as little as 50 or 100 years ago, my experiences would be considered really wooey woo, but nowadays I can explain them very clearly in the context of Jungian psychology. And and so just the interaction of human beings across the internet talking about these things and talking about the good and bad elements of each religion is probably a good thing and what will save us in the end. Um, yeah. Yeah, Cherie refers to Hermann Hesse's work. Hermann Hesse was profoundly influenced by Jung. Um, and that's in the literature, so I'm not going to repeat it here, but um, if we look as Kira Legris did at this era of about 5 to 600 BCE, that was an era when all these religions changed dramatically, and they have changed again in various ways. And so what we need, I follow the Dalai Lama, who says my religion is loving kindness. And absolutely, that's what we have to be, because in the end, living a life is kind of brutal. It's very hard. There are things that happen to us, regardless of whether we're perfect in our philosophical life or what have you. Just staying alive for 80 or 100 years is a non-trivial issue, and I'm living proof of that. Uh, since I have crooked shoulders and everything, um, because I've had so much surgery on my body over the years, and so we have to be kinder to one another. I've traveled now throughout the world. I lived in Japan for 8 years. I lived in India probably for a couple of years. I lived in Saudi Arabia for about 6 months and in 23 different visits there. Um, Probably more than that, probably a year now. Um, and people are just not very different around the world. We're pretty much all the same. We want the same things. And we just have to stop thinking that our way is better than their way, or even that there is such a thing as they. It's all of us. And I think that's the key to it. Um, yeah, Deborah says it's important not to not focus on the demons, or you make them more powerful. And the problem of religious fundamentalism and people being hypocritical. Everybody's hypocritical. You need to get over that. Yep, we're all hypocrites. That's right. You shall know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes of thorns or figs of thistles? Um, I don't know where that comes from, but so Sharia, I'd like to know where I could find that lecture. If you have a link to it or what have you, that would be helpful. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up here, folks. I've gone for the best part of 2 hours, and I've made a place available. I hope that we find some peace, and I hope that our new friend from Israel will join us again and keep us informed of how she's faring in this war, although maybe her having to come save the rest of us, I suppose. We'll see. Um, if Donald Trump's fever dream were to come true, it would be a great thing. Unfortunately, I'm not sanguine about that. So let's pray for peace and um, just be ready, because we may be called upon to send our youth into harm's way. So peace. Bye bye.